for Ceratopsidae at like a grand scale, yeah, we desperately need, postcranial. But, for like if we were to focus just on Triceratops specifically, these animals that are selecting for sexual features on their head, going back to bison, they're the more dramatic changes are usually going to be in the head. So yes and no.
Yeah,
I
but
I, I
I
think
think that's exactly the point that would help to clear things
Yeah,
up. Because if the postcrania is not as plastic as the skull ornamentation, you would actually have like something more solid to base your taxonomy on than the super variable ornamentations on the head.
just why I was specifically saying
Yeah,
understanding postcranial characters
there's
in Ceratopsidae.
there's literally one of these on here that doesn't have a nose horn. Like,
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, but
I'm saying
I
that
mean,
you can't really do skull characters in too much extremes when you have this much diversity in
Mhm.
head shape. You gotta do postcranial stuff.
there is not a single Triceratops specimen that look very much alike. They're all over the fucking place.
And it doesn't help that the holotype of porosis has some interesting stuff with its prep going on.
I mean, yes, the prep
Yep.
is something. Then there's taphonomy, like with lower Hell Creek formation usually having more deformations than upper Hell Creek, so that also leads to another layer on top of this. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Joshua, while you were out, I went and popped out of the front room and Hamster was up.
The hamster.
Amphithar. But yeah.
Uh,
I hope to see some good stuff with Ceratopsidae's, like an actual good revision of Ceratopsidae's character set in my lifetime. And if no one else does it, I'll have to do it myself.
I mean, I have a small checklist of like, once I have the power and whatnot, things I want to do, and I don't care about the rest of Ceratopsidae, but Triceratops postcranial study is definitely on that list. I
yeah.
mean, it's just my take with Triceratops is that we are all correct in saying that, there's so much variation, and yet I'm not really certain the conclusion is there is less and not more species. I feel like there there should be an eyebrow raised to the level of variation we are seeing here.
No,
Yeah.
I
It's just
agree with that.
weird.
Yeah.
It's just weird that we have so many endemic species in formations with other groups of ceratopsids, but Triceratops is found at like multiple different formations and has very different morphology between those two different formations, and yet it's the same genus.
Yeah.
Well, yes and no. It's not really found across a long range of time. In the majority's formations, they only actually persist for the last 300,000 years of the Mesozoic, so a pretty thin slice of time. And there have been efforts to make sure that we're all catching the same species, and interestingly enough, all of them from those last 300,000 years all appear to be that Portia's morphotype. So there's something we're doing something right. The problem is really with the older ones, if anything else, and like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
To me, feels like Porsche's whatever it is relatively well defined. The big nose horn guy is quite understandable.
Yeah.
It's the intermediate ones that are weird, and as we get into like Horridus, it gets a little bit messy.
Yep.
and the
Yeah.
problem
And
kind
some
of
other
rests
stuff.
upon the fact that I don't imagine that like dinosaur anagenesis theories are generally bad as a particularly hot take. But something I've learned recently is that anagenesis as a theory isn't even believed in anymore, and it's just dinosaur paleo has not really caught in the memo. So,
Oh.
like, in
Oh, I
addition
did not know
to
that.
Well then.
yeah, like there was
Anagenesis.
I'll see if I could find the paper, and I know that Dynamo was looking for an image that comes from that paper. I don't know if they ever found it, but
Coincidentally,
basically it
I just got back with
yeah.
my hot chocolate.
Oh, but there we go.
Awesome.
But I mean, the paper can elaborate obviously much better than I can. But basically, anagenesis is just kind of like it's an holdover from like an older ideas of evolution of like how succession works. And so with Triceratops is a good case study of this because with whatever every the lower the trikes are and Prorsus, you definitely see there is an observable morphological trend. You know, the nose horn gets bigger, the fontanelle closes, the brows generally become more forward moving, but not always. Put a pin on that. And the rostrum becomes a bit deeper in profile. But like, is that difference? And these are open-ended questions. These are not nothing. None of this is answered in literature so far. Like, are these differences that we're seeing between Prorsus, the Prorsus morphotype and the early morphotypes, is that of taxonomic significance, or are we just seeing like one population change throughout time, but they're genetically like super similar? Because the Hell Creek Formation, and I guess the Lance Formation, lasts at its longest, it's now thought to be only 1 million years. And megafauna tends to turn over at slower rates or at longer. It takes longer for megafauna to like completely overturn. So like, are we seeing multiple species and there's just like constant inbreeding? Are we seeing like one single regional population and we're just looking at them, settle through time? Are we
Hmm.
seeing multiple species? I mean, Netoceratops is always thought to be like, another crackpot taxon like Ceratops or uh the other ceratops. But like every single time Triceratops as a genus is like reviewed as a whole. It's only happened like 3 or 4 times, but each single time that's happened, all of them have always agreed. And the most recent one is from like the late 1990s, the one that formally suggested only 2 species of Triceratops in the first place. All of them suggest, hey, Netoceratops, uh, even if it's like a species in Triceratops, we probably not like within Prorsus or Hortus. In 2013, there was a redescription of the Netoceratops holotype. The conclusion was probably not the same as the existing species. Like common, everyone kind of pretends that Netoceratops isn't a real thing, but if you follow the literature, Netoceratops is a real thing.
Yeah,
Huh.
but I
So
am
like,
I am very skeptical of that. Like some of the conclusions, like oh, the frill doesn't go like this. Seems like taphonomy 101 to me. Some of these things.
I mean, you would
I
think, but my
am.
take on it is kind of like we are willing to ascribe new species to so much less difference in morphology. And I'm not saying that like, oh, Netoceratops is his own different genus or blah 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 blah. But I am saying that like I I really think that there's probably more here, and we're hand waving it all as either the 2 species hypothesis or the variation hypothesis. And I don't think we know that for certain.
Yeah,
No.
yeah, I agree with you, but I think it's like a difference between like thought. I would say to
Wait,
me,
what?
you say, "Ah, we are willing to ascribe new species on way less." I think that is a problem. That's
I
exactly
agree.
the problem.
I,
We
Yeah,
I,
I
I
mean,
shouldn't.
agree. I am not saying that like, oh,
Yeah.
they're so different. They must be. That's not obviously not how apomorphies work. But what I am saying is like, you know, it's kind of it's provenance. These are without necessarily intending to. These are basically provenance based things. It has 3 horns and it's clearly not Taurosaurus because it lacks a fenestra, so it must be Triceratops. And if it's Triceratops, well, let's see. Is it like the last 300K years? Yes, no. If not, it's one species. If not, it's the other. And like that's not really like there's a lack of rigor going into these referrals. I'm
Hmm.
not saying that
Mm.
like Triceratops is definitely 5 species. No, for all we know, it could be the 2 species after all. I'm just saying that this hasn't really been rigorously tested in the last few decades.
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Also, welcome, Nick.
Hey, Nick.
Hello.
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 Hmm.
Thought I'd tune in a little bit to see how it's been going.
Yes, yes.
Neat.
Nick, did you see that I drew a bear gulped creature?
No, but I fire reacted what you tagged me with.
I drew Balancia earlier today.
Dude, where? Huh?
I'll post it in voice chat text. I posted it in other place earlier. I made it look semi-normal. I made it
It
look
looks so fucking
semi-normal.
stupid. It looks so dumb.
Oh, have I?
I-
Have I seen it?
I want to throw rocks at it.
It looks more normal than other recon, but it's still so stupid looking.
Yeah,
I
now
feel like
draw
you
it-
could make a
draw it-
lot of money with pedalodont stuffed animals, like life-size plushies.
Oh, absolutely. Especially in Japan.
GW.
Genuinely thought it was holding a mug of coffee for a moment there.
Yeah, these guys have weird fins. Like they don't have they wouldn't be like ratfish, like they're more like stingray fins. But like these guys aren't benthic, so they just have these really big pectorals. Nick, I also started earlier on another Bear Gulch pedalodont.
Nice. You should draw Balancia from the front, Paul.
Aye.
Horrible creature.
Ooh, yippee! It's one
Lancia? Like
variation.
Lancia?
We got a
Valkyrie?
Yoshi's trike.
No,
All right, guys,
no.
but guys, these fish. This is the one time I'm gonna be like, guys, we're not. This isn't about fish. This is about fucking T-Wex and the Triceratops.
No, it's about the four species. It's about the four species of turtle Yash
Reminds-
added.
About the frogs, actually.
Dakota Raptor? Question mark?
Yes, I
Yeah.
covered T-Rex and Dakota Raptors.
Well-
They are
well,
eating me
none of them.
alive.
None of them were soft shells. There's no
You haven't
Dakota
done a soft
Raptor
shell yet?
here.
I don't
There's
care.
no There's no
I
Dakota's Raptors
they
here.
are Dakota Raptors in my heart.
Ooh, speaking of the garbage taxon, Lancia,
You-
how many stuff is in a chimera? What's your opinion?
Well, I have so many thoughts. If I ever actually
It's
commit to
probably
that Dakota
unhealthy
Raptor
how many
blog,
thoughts you had
it'll-
on that.
it will.
Dude,
it-
my fucking.
I think, in my unprofessional opinion, and from what I've seen and have been told, well, there's Axis Demis, there's a Canic Nathid,
Mhm.
there's actual Dromaeosaur bits, but there's something interesting about those Dromaeosaur bits, and maybe a Force Taxon, depending on who you ask. The the limbs. I think most of Dakota Raptor. I mean, the joke, ha ha ha, Dakota Raptor to turtle. But most of the material, I think, is probably Canic Nathid. And
think too, yeah.
I think
The-
it's funnier to say turtle though.
the femur, or not the femur, the tibia is a good match to Anzu. Not saying it's Anzu, just it's Canic
Yeah.
Nathid tibia.
It might be.
And
And
I wouldn't-
I just look at the tibia from the ornithomimids you sent from Scholard. That is also very close, so I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, the reason why I think, well, in addition to having someone else vocally affirm to me, yeah, it's probably Canic Nathid. Something interesting that, and this is why I kind of want to write about it before my actions have consequences one day, is the description of the Codaraptor states that the humerus laterally bows, but I asked Napoli about that, and Dromaeosaur, to his knowledge, Dromaeosaur humeri don't actually bow. Canic Nathid humeri do bow. They bow medially. So what I think happened is that dear old De Palma over here, and I have no evidence, but this is my suspicion, mistaked a Oviraptorosaur humerus for a Dromaeosaur humerus and put it on the wrong side of the body.
That's really funny.
Oh.
Furthermore,
Wow.
the EO or the EO Neophron or there's a lot of papers that say that Oviraptorosaur leg proportions are pretty conserved through size. This is surprisingly true.
Yeah.
And so
Mhm.
I decided to just kind of as a thought experiment take the measurements in the De Palma paper. And for the record, I do think the measurements are probably legit. But I took the measurements from the paper and overlaid them on Hartman's Anzu skeletal, and the proportions are almost identical. Limb proportions.
Well,
Wow,
Would you
wow.
look
Yeah.
at that?
And so there were only and I know a lot of workers more qualified than I have already commented on the claw. I don't have an opinion on the claw. Maybe it's raptor, maybe it's tyrannosaur.
Yeah,
But
this
the
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 sorry.
only two like materials that are left from the Codaraptor after this are the tailbones, and not all of them are diagnostic. One of them might be, and the metatarsal. If I'm pretty sure the
The
caudal
tarsal.
is the metatarsal. We have
I don't
published
think there's a
onto metatarsal.
metatarsal in there.
Oh
Yeah,
my gosh, this is
it
literally just
is. It's
the sporphatic
broken and it's
neck.
reconstructed, but there is a metatarsal.
There is a
It's
Hmm.
metatarsal.
it's
Okay. Uh,
literally
A lot of it is reconstructed. I don't know what the original shape would be, but if
what?
we assume that it's dromaeosaur by process of elimination, because I really don't think it can be. It's definitely not kinnicknathed. If we assume that it's a dromaeosaur, and if we assume that the tail is a dromaeosaur, the tail comes from an animal that's larger than Deinonychus.
Okay.
Uh, the metatarsal comes from an animal that's even larger than that. It's impossible to get the tail to fit on the metatarsal. So
Hmm.
either this is the weirdest proportion dromaeosaur ever, or there's a chance there's like multiple dromaeosaurs in here. It is terrible. I mean, I know that the Raptor is already known to be bad, but it is.
It is
I'm talking about
bullshit.
like an F minus tier taxon here.
I
Oh,
love my single badass.
It is literally to the point that like that's the funny. The diagnostic part is on the tibia. The tibia is not a fucking is
Yeah,
not a
and
fucking
tibia might not
dromaeosaur.
even be like dromaeosaur either.
I don't know what
And
the femur looks weird. I don't know what the femur is.
hmm.
And I've heard opinions on the claws. Big claw, probably. I'm just gonna call it by the name, whatever the fuck it is. One of the,
I was gonna
I
say we
think one of the hand claws of Nanotyrannus, specifically the shorter, broader one, not the very long one, and the quote unquote super diagnostic, whatever the fuck it is, pedal claw. Somebody says, I think even Holtz or somebody says that looks like a hawk's claw of a tyrannosaur. And I'm like, oh my fucking god, this is
I
so
yeah, no, it
shit.
is.
I
It's
was
so shit.
I was about to bring up. We've been talking about one very problematic taxa here for a while, but we've been for some reason not mentioning a different one.
And we don't
One
have
that's
to.
Yeah.
I want to
But if you
believe.
do, I will defend it.
I want to believe.
I have been
He's
swayed.
real.
I will defend it. I
we
am on the side of Nanotyrannus.
I think most of us here have read the arguments and stuff and are probably on a similar page at this point.
yeah.
But we
Yeah.
don't
I'm
have to. Like we talked about taxonomy already too much.
I'm
Guys, I think Nanotyrannus doesn't exist.
I'm on this. I'm in the fight against
Let's
Nanotyrannus
clear up some
on the
confusion.
side of Nanotyrannus.
No, actually.
You have forgotten. You have forgotten the real,
Uh,
real
well,
enemy, and the real enemy is Digimon.
May I bring up one other taxon that I actually really hope Yosh includes? I don't know how
Yeah.
likely it is, though.
Nanotyrant.
Nah, I'm not.
Which one?
The parrot.
no.
Oh my
No,
god.
no,
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 no, no,
no.
no, wait.
Okay, I need to talk about this one. I'm going to share my well, it's not really a secret, but I guess my would-be secret is that I'm really hoping to have my first published paper be about that specimen and basically turning the blog I did into an actual paper. It won't
Nice.
happen for a long time. But like, I mean, I think that specimen is so interesting because like I don't know, it's like we had a parrot analogous bird in Hell Creek. We probably had parrot analogous birds all over Laramidia, and none of them preserved except for that beak. I don't know.
Is it a parrot? No, like it's bird, or is it like a
No,
king like that or something?
it looks like a parrot. It's very likely not a parrot. Parrots are like one of the last diverging neowaves
Yeah, it's
in like
not.
Yeah,
all
It's not.
phylogenies. They're coming out as like Eocene animals, and
yeah,
in
and
the
we
Eocene, they're
But
super
is it
super
a
like
bird?
generalized.
yeah we have good
Probably a
Pseudocopass
bird.
reeds from the Eocene in like Europe and stuff.
I think it's probably. I mean, they want I've been suggested to do a phylogeny, which yes, of course. My good instinct, it's probably a bird. It's been the few times it's been brought up in literature before. It's been suggested to be an Oviraptorosaur, and like no, because it has like zero of the apomorphies of a canignacid beak.
Hmm.
It's like it's surprisingly it's surprisingly featureless. Canignacid beaks have like foramina
Hmm.
all over their beaks, and they're very very like distinct foramina too. And that this specimen has like none of that. And I know it's probably a mature animal despite its tiny size because we have the embryo canignacid and baby long, and they show that like the beak is not completely fused at birth. I mean, go figure. Versus the lance beak, which, as far as I can tell, you know,